The Great Hall of the Galactic Concord stretched for nearly 2 kilometers. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Light came from thousands of floating crystals that the Valurians had grown over 10,000 years. Every surface was smooth and perfect. Every corner held some treasure from a dozen different worlds. This was the heart of galactic civilization. This was where the important decisions were made. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at her assigned place on the floor. She was 63 years old. Her hair had turned gray at the temples. Lines marked her face from years of smiling when she wanted to scream. She had served as humanity's voice in this hall for 22 years. Before her, others had stood in this same spot. They had made the same requests. They had received the same answers. Today would be no different. She knew this. But she had to try anyway. The hall was filled with representatives from over 300 species. Most of them floated in specialized chambers that matched their home environments. Some breathed methane. Others lived in liquid. A few existed as pure energy patterns held in magnetic bottles. But the ones who mattered, the ones who actually made decisions, sat on the raised platform at the far end of the hall. The High Council of the Galactic Concord consisted of 3 species. The Valurians were tall and thin, with skin like polished silver and eyes that glowed soft blue. They had founded the Concord 12,000 years ago. Their world was a paradise of gentle winds and warm seas. Nothing on Valuria had ever tried to kill them. They had evolved in peace and believed that peace was the natural state of all things. The Thessari were shorter and rounder. Their bodies were covered in soft golden fur. They had 4 arms and faces that always seemed to be smiling. But Elena had learned long ago that a Thessari smile meant nothing. Their world was even gentler than Valuria. The most dangerous creature on their planet was a small insect that sometimes caused mild itching. The Kethrani were the youngest of the 3 elder species. They looked almost like Earth's octopi, but larger and with more tentacles. They floated in anti-gravity fields and communicated through color changes on their skin. Their ocean world had been so calm and nutrient-rich that they had never needed to develop competition. They simply existed, grew smart, and eventually reached the stars. These 3 species had decided long ago that they understood the universe. They had mapped the galaxy. They had created laws. They had built a civilization that had lasted longer than humanity had existed, and they were absolutely certain that they knew what was best for everyone else. Elena waited as the current discussion finished. Some minor species was requesting permission to expand their mining operations. The council approved it in less than a minute. The request had probably been decided days ago. This public session was just for show. Finally, her name was called. Elena walked forward until she stood in the center of the great hall. A spotlight found her, making her visible to the thousands of beings watching. She had done this so many times. The walk no longer frightened her. Now it just made her tired. "The representative of Earth may speak," announced the Valurian High Arbiter. His name was Keth Velos, and he had held his position for over 200 years. He had seen every human ambassador who had ever stood in this hall. He had denied every request they had ever made. Elena took a breath. "Honored Council, distinguished representatives, I come before you today to renew humanity's petition for colonial expansion rights in the Outer Rim territories." A soft sound moved through the hall. It might have been surprise. It might have been amusement. Elena continued anyway. "For 200 years, humanity has been a member of the Galactic Concord. We have followed your laws. We have paid our tributes. We have served in the positions you have assigned to us. We have asked for nothing except the same rights that other species enjoy." She paused. Somewhere in the hall, a Thessari was already laughing. The sound was high and musical. It was also deeply insulting. The Outer Rim territories contain 17 habitable worlds that remain unclaimed. Humanity's population has grown beyond what our current colonies can support. We need room to expand. We need resources to develop. We need the same opportunities that every other species in this Concord has been given. The Valurian High Arbiter raised one elegant hand. The gesture silenced the hall. "Ambassador Vasquez, this petition has been submitted 47 times in the past 2 centuries. The answer has always been the same. Do you expect something different today?" "I expect justice," Elena said. "I expect fairness. I expect this council to honor its own principles." Now the Thessari delegate spoke. His name was Melaran, and he was widely considered the most cultured being in the Concord. He was also, in Elena's private opinion, the most cruel. "Ambassador, We have explained this many times. Humanity is not ready for expansion. And when will we be ready? Elena asked. What must we do to prove ourselves? Meloran's forearms spread wide in a gesture of false sympathy. You must understand your place in the cosmic order. You come from a Class 1-2 death world. Your species evolved through violence and struggle. These traits are concerning. We cannot allow such instincts to spread unchecked through the galaxy. Elena felt her hands tighten into fists at her sides. She forced them to relax. Earth is our home. We did not choose its conditions. We survived them. Should we be punished for our strength? Strength. The Kethrani delegate pulsed with colors that Elena had learned meant mockery. Is that what you call it? Your world has creatures that hunt each other for food. Your weather systems destroy entire cities. Your very bacteria can kill. You did not develop strength, Ambassador. You developed persistence. Like vermin, the hall erupted in laughter. Hundreds of species, thousands of beings, all laughing at humanity, at Elena, at everything her people had achieved. She stood in the center of that laughter and did not move. She had learned this skill long ago. She had learned to stand still while the galaxy mocked her. She had learned to keep her face calm while her heart burned with fury. This was what it meant to be human in the Galactic Concord. This was what 200 years of membership had given them. The High Arbiter raised his hand again. The laughter slowly died. Ambassador Vasquez, your petition is denied. Again, humanity will remain within its current borders. This is for your own protection, as much as the galaxy's. Our protection. Elena could not keep the bitterness from her voice. You deny us resources. You deny us technology. You deny us representation on this council. How is any of that for our protection? You would not understand, Meloran said. Your species is young. Your perspective is limited. In time, perhaps in another 1,000 years, you may develop the wisdom to see things as we do. Until then, you must trust in our guidance. Elena looked around the hall. She saw hundreds of faces, hundreds of different forms of life. Some looked at her with pity. Some looked at her with contempt. A few, very few, looked at her with something that might have been sympathy. These were the other junior species, the ones who had also been denied and dismissed, the ones who knew exactly how she felt. I have a question, Elena said. In all the history of the Galactic Concord, has any species ever risen from junior membership to the High Council? The question seemed to surprise the elder species. They exchanged glances with each other. Finally, the High Arbiter answered, No, such a thing has never happened. The Council was established by the 3 founding species. It will always be led by the 3 founding species. This is the natural order. The natural order, Elena repeated. And this natural order will never change, no matter what any species does, no matter how much we achieve or how long we wait. The universe has hierarchies, Ambassador. Some species are meant to lead, others are meant to follow. Humanity's role is clear. You come from a world of death and struggle. You carry those instincts in your blood. You can never be trusted with true power. Elena nodded slowly. She had known this was true. She had known it for years, but hearing it said so plainly, so casually, was still painful. Thank you for your honesty, High Arbiter. It is clarifying. She turned and walked back to her place on the floor. The spotlight followed her for a moment, then moved on. The next petition was called. Some species wanted to adjust their trade agreements. The galaxy moved on without caring about humanity at all. Elena stood in her place and watched the proceedings without really seeing them. Her mind was elsewhere. It was on a message she would send when she returned to the human delegation's quarters. A message that had been prepared decades ago, waiting for the right moment. A message that would change everything. The session lasted another 4 hours. Elena remained until the end, as protocol required. Then she walked through the beautiful corridors of the Concord station, past gardens filled with alien flowers and fountains that defied gravity. She passed Valurians who looked through her as if she did not exist. She passed Thesari who smiled their meaningless smiles. She passed Kethrani who pulsed with colors she was not supposed to understand. Finally, she reached the human section. It was small compared to the other delegations. The corridors were plain. The rooms were functional. The Concord had given humanity just enough space to exist, and not a centimeter more. Her staff was waiting for her. They had watched the session on screens. They knew what had happened. Their faces showed the same mixture of anger and resignation that Elena felt in her heart. "They laughed at us again," said James Chen, her deputy. He was young, only 35. He still believed that things could change through negotiation. Elena remembered being that young. She remembered having that hope. "They will always laugh at us," Elena said. "Until they can't anymore." She walked to her private office and sealed the door behind her. Then she sat at her desk and activated her most secure communication device. It was not technology that the Concord had approved. The Concord did not know it existed. There were many things that the Concord did not know about humanity. Elena typed a message. It was short. It had been agreed upon long before she was born. The words were simple, but their meaning was vast. Option Prometheus is authorized. Begin withdrawal protocols. They will never see us as equals. It is time to become something they cannot ignore. She sent the message to Earth. It would travel through channels that the Concord could not detect. It would reach the United Stellar Council within hours, and then everything would change. Elena leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. 200 years. Her species had endured 200 years of insults and dismissal. They had played the role of the humble junior species. They had pretended to accept their place. They had let the galaxy believe that humans were exactly what the Council said they were. Persistent vermin, who had somehow learned to build starships. But the galaxy had made a mistake. They had looked at humanity's death world origin and seen weakness. They had looked at human struggle and seen primitive instincts. They had never considered another possibility. They had never imagined that a species forged in constant danger might learn to plan, might learn to wait, might learn to hide their true strength until the moment was right. The Galactic Concord believed it understood humanity. The Galactic Concord was wrong. And soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn just how wrong it had been. Elena opened her eyes and looked out her window. Stars filled the darkness. Somewhere out there, 17 human colony worlds held nearly 50 billion people. They had been told to be patient. They had been told to trust the plan. They had been told that one day, the waiting would end. That day had finally come. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Concord, the elder species continued their discussions. They approved petitions and denied others. They made decisions that affected trillions of lives. They believed they would do this forever. They did not know that in a small office in the human section, an old woman had just lit a fuse that would burn for 50 years. They did not know that the species they had mocked and dismissed was about to disappear from their sight, and they did not know that when humanity returned, the galaxy would never be the same. The stars continued to shine. The universe continued to turn, and somewhere in the void, humanity began to prepare for the future it had always deserved. The message from Ambassador Vasquez reached Earth in 6 hours. It passed through relay stations hidden in asteroids and moons, traveling along pathways that no Concord sensor had ever detected. When it arrived at the United Stellar Council's secure facility beneath the Swiss Alps, alarms began to sound in offices around the world. Within 24 hours, every member of the council had gathered in the great underground chamber. 200 representatives from every nation on Earth sat in curved rows facing a central platform. Above them, holographic displays showed the 17 human colony worlds, each one represented by their own delegates, joining through secure quantum links. Secretary General Marcus Webb stood at the center. He was 78 years old, a former soldier who had spent his life preparing for this moment. His father had been on the council. His grandfather had helped create it. 4 generations of his family had carried the secret of Option Prometheus, waiting for the day when it would finally be used. "You have all received Ambassador Vasquez's message," he said. His voice was calm but carried to every corner of the chamber. "For 200 years, we have played a role. We have pretended to be what the galaxy expected us to be. Today, that pretense ends." A representative from the colony world of New Beijing spoke through the holographic link. "Is withdrawal truly necessary? Perhaps we could negotiate further. Perhaps we could find another way." Webb shook his head slowly. "Chen Wei, you know as well as I do that negotiation has failed. 47 petitions denied. 2 centuries of insults. The High Arbiter himself told Ambassador Vasquez that humanity can never be trusted with power. There is no path forward within the Concord. There never was. But withdrawal means isolation," another representative said. "We will lose access to Concord trade routes. We will lose access to their technology markets. Our economy depends on those connections. Our economy depends on what they allow us to have. Webb replied. They give us scraps and expect us to be grateful. They deny us the resources we need to grow. They keep us weak and call it protection. He paused and looked around the chamber. I ask you all to consider something. In 200 years of Concord membership, has humanity become stronger or weaker? Have we grown, or have we been contained? Silence filled the chamber. Everyone knew the answer. The Concord believes we are primitive, Webb continued. They believe we have nothing that they need. They believe that without their guidance, we would destroy ourselves. A thin smile crossed his face. They are wrong, and it is time for them to discover how wrong they are. He pressed a control on his podium. The holographic displays changed, showing something that most of the representatives had never seen. Ships, massive ships, weapons platforms, space stations, an entire fleet hidden in the darkness between stars, built over 2 centuries in absolute secrecy. This is Option Prometheus, Webb said. While we played the role of humble junior species, our best scientists and engineers were working on other projects that the Concord knows nothing about. We have spent 200 years learning their technology, understanding their science, and then surpassing it. A murmur of amazement rippled through the chamber. The new Beijing representative stared at the images with wide eyes. How is this possible? The Concord monitors all advanced technology development. They would have detected construction on this scale. They monitor what they expect to find, Webb answered. They expect primitive humans building primitive things. They never look deeper. They never imagined that we might be capable of more. Their arrogance is our greatest weapon. He changed the display again. Now it showed human space, the 17 colony worlds and the routes that connected them. When we withdraw from the Concord, we will seal our borders completely. No Concord ship will enter. No Concord signal will penetrate. We will go dark. For how long? Someone asked. As long as necessary. 50 years, perhaps longer. We need time to build, time to prepare, time to become something that the galaxy cannot ignore. The vote took 3 hours. Every representative spoke. Some expressed fear, some expressed hope, some simply expressed exhaustion with centuries of humiliation. But in the end, when the final count was made, the result was unanimous. Humanity would withdraw from the Galactic Concord. The announcement was transmitted to the Concord Assembly the following day. Ambassador Vasquez delivered it personally, standing one last time in the Great Hall, where she had been mocked and dismissed so many times. The species of Earth hereby withdraws from the Galactic Concord, she said. Her voice was steady. Her face showed no emotion. We renounce our junior membership. We reject your authority over our space. We terminate all treaties, all trade agreements, all diplomatic relations. From this moment forward, humanity speaks only for itself. The hall fell silent. In 12,000 years of Concord history, no species had ever voluntarily withdrawn. It was unthinkable. It was impossible. Yet here was this small, primitive human woman, standing before the greatest powers in the galaxy, and telling them that humanity was leaving. The High Arbiter Kethvilos recovered first. His silver face arranged itself into an expression of gentle condescension. Ambassador Vasquez, this is unexpected, but surely you understand that withdrawal is not a simple matter. There are treaties to consider, obligations to fulfill, debts to repay. All of humanity's debts have been settled, Elena replied. Our accountants have been thorough. We owe the Concord nothing. You owe us everything. Melloran snapped. His golden fur bristled with genuine anger. Without Concord protection, your pathetic colonies would have been destroyed decades ago. Without our guidance, your species would still be throwing rocks at each other. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Perhaps, but we will take our chances. The Kethrani delegate pulsed with colors of contempt. You are making a terrible mistake. The galaxy is dangerous. There are threats that you know nothing about. Without the Concord's protection, humanity will not survive a century. Then that is our choice to make, Elena said. Goodbye, honored council. I doubt we will speak again. She walked out of the Great Hall for the last time. Behind her, the elder species watched in stunned disbelief. The vermin were leaving. The persistent, annoying humans were actually leaving. It was so unexpected that none of them knew how to respond. But as the shock faded, a new emotion emerged. Relief. The humans had always been a problem. They asked too many questions. They complained too much. They refused to accept their proper place. Now they were gone. The Concord could finally move on without their constant irritation. The High Arbiter addressed the assembly with a calm voice. Let this be recorded in the histories. The species of Earth has chosen to leave the Galactic Concord. They will not be pursued. They will not be forced to return. We will simply wait. He paused and looked around the hall. I give them 10 years, perhaps less. Without our technology, without our trade, without our protection, they will realize their mistake. They will come crawling back, begging for readmission, and then, perhaps, they will finally understand their place. The hall murmured in agreement. Yes, that was how it would happen. The foolish humans would struggle alone for a few years, maybe a decade, and then they would return. They would be more humble then, more willing to accept Concord wisdom. This withdrawal was just a tantrum, nothing more. It would pass. But in a small research station orbiting a Thessari colony world, a young academic named Keth Von watched the recordings of the withdrawal announcement with growing unease. He had spent his career studying alien species, particularly the unusual ones, and there was something in Ambassador Vasquez's face that bothered him. She had not looked angry. She had not looked desperate. She had looked satisfied, like someone who had finally completed a long and difficult task. Like someone who knew exactly what was going to happen next. Keth Von pulled up everything he could find on Earth. The data was limited. The Concord had never considered humans worthy of detailed study. But what he found disturbed him deeply. Earth was classified as a Class 1-2 death world. This was the second highest danger rating possible. The planet had unstable weather that could destroy entire regions. It had predators that hunted in packs using complex strategies. It had diseases that evolved constantly, defeating any immune system that could not adapt quickly enough. It had earthquakes and volcanoes and floods and droughts. It was, by any reasonable standard, a nightmare world where nothing should have survived. Yet humans had not just survived. They had thrived. They had spread across every continent, every climate, every environment their world offered. They had built civilizations in deserts and jungles, on mountains and islands, in frozen wastelands and tropical swamps. Wherever death tried to claim them, they found ways to endure. Keth Von read the historical records with growing fascination. Humans had developed agriculture in lands that seemed to produce nothing but poison and thorns. They had crossed oceans in wooden boats, navigating by stars they barely understood. They had survived plagues that killed half their population and rebuilt their societies within generations. They had invented weapons of unimaginable destruction, and then, somehow, chosen not to use them to annihilate themselves. This was not the behavior of primitive vermin. This was the behavior of a species that had been tested by the universe itself and refused to break. He wrote a report. He sent it to his superiors in the Thessari Academic Council. He explained his concerns. He suggested that perhaps humanity was not what the Concord assumed. He recommended that the withdrawal be treated with caution, rather than dismissal. His report was ignored. His superiors sent back a polite note thanking him for his diligence and suggesting that he focus on more productive research. Humanity was no longer a concern. Humanity was gone. End of matter. Keth Von did not accept this answer. He continued his research in secret. He gathered every piece of data he could find about human history, human psychology, human achievements. And the more he learned, the more his unease grew. There was a pattern in human behavior that he could see, but his superiors refused to acknowledge. When humans were pushed, they pushed back. When humans were threatened, they adapted. When humans were told that something was impossible, they found ways to do it anyway. This was not the pattern of a species that would give up and return begging for help. This was the pattern of a species that would use their isolation to become something new. He tried one more time to warn someone. He contacted a colleague in the Valurian scientific establishment and shared his findings. The response was laughter. Keth Von, my friend, you worry too much. Humans are clever, yes, adaptable, certainly, but they are still primitives from a death world. They have no real science. They have no real technology. They have nothing that we need to fear. In a decade, they will be back, and we will welcome them with open arms, because that is what civilized species do. Keth Von wanted to argue. He wanted to explain that underestimating a species that had evolved on a Class 1-2 world was profoundly dangerous. He wanted to point out that humans had a history of surprising their enemies at the worst possible moment, but he knew it was useless. The Concord had made up its mind. Humanity was dismissed. Humanity was forgotten. Humanity was no longer worth thinking about. So Kethvan returned to his research and waited. He did not know what would happen next. He did not know how long it would take. But he was absolutely certain of one thing. When humanity emerged from their isolation, the galaxy would wish it had paid more attention. Meanwhile, in human space, the borders were closing. Ships were recalled. Stations were sealed. Communication arrays were shut down. The 17 colony worlds and the 50 billion humans who lived on them began to disappear from the galactic network. Secretary General Webb watched the process from his office on Earth. The withdrawal was proceeding exactly as planned. In a few weeks, humanity would be completely invisible to Concord sensors. The galaxy would think they had retreated into primitive isolation. The galaxy would be wrong. In hidden shipyards throughout human space, construction was accelerating. Thousands of workers who had been waiting for this moment began their true work. Scientists opened laboratories that had never been registered with the Concord. Engineers activated machines that represented 2 centuries of secret development. The human species was not retreating. It was preparing. Webb looked at the latest reports and allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. The Concord expected humanity to fail. The Concord expected humanity to return in 10 years, humbled and broken. The Concord was going to be very surprised. 50 years passed. At first, the Galactic Concord remembered humanity. The High Council made occasional references to the withdrawal incident and predicted the imminent return of the wayward species. Diplomats prepared welcoming speeches. Trade negotiators drafted new agreements that would be even more restrictive than before. Everyone expected the humans to come crawling back, just as the High Arbiter had predicted. But the humans did not return. After 10 years, the predictions changed. Perhaps it would take 20 years. The humans were stubborn. They might hold out longer than expected. But eventually, the harsh realities of isolation would force them to seek Concord assistance. After 20 years, confusion began to replace certainty. Surely the humans should have contacted someone by now. Surely their primitive technology should have failed. Surely their colonies should be struggling. Yet there was no communication. No distress signals. No evidence of collapse. After 30 years, the Concord sent its first probe to the edge of human space. The probe detected nothing. No ships, no stations, no signals of any kind. It was as if humanity had simply vanished. After 40 years, the High Council decided that the humans had probably destroyed themselves. Their death world instincts had finally caught up with them. Internal conflict, resource depletion, technological failure. Something must have gone wrong. The galaxy had been spared the burden of primitive humanity forever. This explanation satisfied most species. They removed humanity from their official records. They erased human colonies from their maps. They forgot that a species called humans had ever existed. But Kethvan did not forget. He was old now, over 200 years by Thessari standards. His golden fur had faded to pale cream. His 4 arms moved more slowly than they once had, but his mind remained sharp, and his obsession with humanity had never faded. He had spent 50 years gathering every scrap of information he could find. Most of it was useless. The Concord had never bothered to study humans carefully, but occasionally, something interesting would emerge. A sensor anomaly at the edge of human space. A gravitational distortion that should not exist. A burst of energy that defied explanation. The anomalies were rare. They were easy to dismiss. But Kethvan noticed that they were becoming more frequent, and they were becoming larger. He requested a meeting with the Thessari Academic Council to present his findings. To his surprise, they agreed. Perhaps they were curious. Perhaps they were humoring an old researcher. Whatever the reason, Kethvan found himself standing before the most respected minds of his species, explaining why he believed humanity was not dead. The anomalies form a pattern, he said, displaying his data on the Council's holographic system. They cluster at specific points along the boundary of former human space. They occur at regular intervals. They are increasing in both frequency and intensity. The Council members exchanged skeptical looks. "What are you suggesting?" asked the senior academician. "That humans are still active? That they are building something?" I am suggesting that we do not know what they are doing, Kethvan replied. And that concerns me deeply. A species does not evolve on a Class 1-2 death world by being passive. Humans are survivors. They adapt. They overcome. The idea that they would simply collapse after withdrawal is inconsistent with everything we know about their history. Their history is primitive, another council member said. They spent most of their existence fighting each other over resources and ideology. They nearly destroyed their own planet before they developed space travel. If they have destroyed themselves now, it would simply be consistent with their nature. Kethvan felt the familiar frustration rise within him. With respect, you are missing the point. Yes, humans are violent. Yes, they are aggressive. But they are also remarkably good at directing those traits toward external threats. When humanity faces a common enemy, they unite with terrifying efficiency, and for the past 200 years, the Concord has been their common enemy. This statement caused a stir among the council members. The Concord was never their enemy, the senior academician protested. We offered them membership. We gave them access to galactic civilization. We protected them. We mocked them, Kethvan said quietly. We denied their petitions. We called them vermin. We told them they could never be trusted with power. We made them feel small and worthless for 2 centuries. He paused. And then we were surprised when they left. The meeting ended without resolution. The council thanked Kethvan for his work and promised to consider his concerns. He knew they would do nothing. The Concord had decided that humanity was gone, and nothing would change that belief until the evidence became impossible to ignore. That evidence arrived 5 years later. A Kethrani reconnaissance fleet was conducting routine patrol operations near the Outer Rim. This region had once bordered human space, but the border had been meaningless for decades. There was nothing there. Everyone knew there was nothing there. The fleet consisted of 12 ships. They were well armed and experienced. Their commander was a veteran of numerous operations. When the first anomaly appeared on their sensors, she ordered the fleet to investigate. It was probably just a natural phenomenon, perhaps a dying star or a wandering asteroid. Nothing to worry about. They were wrong. What the sensors detected defied explanation. Energy signatures larger than anything the Kethrani had ever recorded. Gravitational distortions that suggested objects of impossible mass and movement. Something was moving through the void, something vast and powerful. The fleet commander ordered her ships to hold position and record everything. She sent a transmission back to Concord headquarters, describing what they were seeing. Then she waited for instructions. The instructions never came. Before Concord Command could respond, the anomaly changed. The energy signatures focused. The gravitational distortions aligned. And suddenly, impossibly, something emerged from the darkness. It was a ship. At least, the fleet commander assumed it was a ship. But it was larger than any ship she had ever seen. Larger than any ship that should exist. It dwarfed her entire fleet. It dwarfed the largest Valyrian dreadnoughts. It was the size of a small moon. And it was only the first. More followed. Dozens. Then hundreds. Ships of every size. From small craft that might have been fighters to massive vessels that seemed to bend space around them. They moved in perfect formation, flowing through the void like a single organism. And on every hull, painted in colors that burned against the darkness of space, was a symbol that the fleet commander did not recognize. A blue and green sphere. Earth. The Kethrani fleet tried to retreat. They activated their drives and turned toward Concord space. But the human ships were faster. Impossibly faster. They appeared around the retreating fleet in an instant, surrounding them completely without firing a single shot. Then a transmission came through. A human voice, speaking in perfect Kethrani. This is the Human Defense Force vessel Prometheus to Kethrani Reconnaissance Fleet. You are not in danger. You are being allowed to leave. Return to the Concord and deliver this message. We remember. We have prepared. We are coming. The fleet commander tried to respond, to demand explanations, to understand what was happening. But the human ships were already moving away, fading back into the darkness from which they had emerged. Within minutes, the Kethrani fleet was alone again, surrounded by empty space. The journey back to Concord territory took 3 weeks. The fleet commander spent every moment of that time reviewing her sensor data, trying to make sense of what she had witnessed. The numbers did not add up. The technology should not exist. Humans were supposed to be primitive. Humans were supposed to be dead. Humans were supposed to be a minor annoyance that the galaxy had already forgotten. When she reached Kethrani space, she transmitted her recordings to Concord headquarters. Within hours, emergency sessions were called. The High Council convened for the first time in years. Scientists analyzed the data and declared it impossible. Military commanders studied the formations and turned pale. Kethvan was summoned from his retirement to offer his assessment. He looked at the recordings with tired eyes and said the words that everyone was thinking but no one wanted to speak. I warned you. For 50 years I warned you, but you would not listen. The High Arbiter demanded explanations. How had humans developed such technology? Where had they gotten the resources? Why had the Concord detected nothing? Because you were not looking, Kethvan replied. Because you assumed that a species from a death world could never match your achievements. Because your arrogance blinded you to the obvious truth. And what truth is that? Kethvan turned to face the council directly. Humans did not evolve on a paradise world. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day of their existence. They learned to plan. They learned to build. They learned to hide their strength until the moment was right. You gave them 200 years to study your technology and find your weaknesses. Then you gave them 50 years of isolation to use that knowledge. He paused. What did you think they would do? Give up and die? Before anyone could respond, a new transmission arrived. It was broadcast on all frequencies, penetrating every communication system in the Concord. A single message, repeated in every known language. A human woman appeared on screen. She was old, her face lined with age, her hair completely white, but her eyes were sharp and clear, and her voice carried the weight of centuries. This is Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the Human Defense Force. I speak on behalf of the species of Earth. She paused. 50 years ago, I stood before your council and announced humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Concord. You laughed. You dismissed us. You predicted our failure and forgot our existence. Her expression hardened. We remember. We remember every insult, every denied petition, every time you called us vermin, every time you told us we could never be trusted. We remember all of it. The image shifted to show the human fleet. Hundreds of ships, thousands of ships, more ships than the Concord had ever assembled in one place. They filled the screen, stretching to the horizon of space. This is what 50 years of memory looks like. This is what happens when you underestimate a death world species. This is the price of your arrogance. Elena Vasquez reappeared on screen. Her old face showed no anger, no hatred, only a calm, patient determination that was somehow more frightening than rage. We are coming to Veluria Prime. We are coming to the heart of your Concord. Not to destroy, not to conquer, but to have a conversation that should have happened 250 years ago. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes seeming to look directly at every being watching the transmission. We suggest you prepare. The transmission ended. Silence filled every council chamber, every government office, every home where the message had been received. The galaxy had forgotten humanity. Now humanity was reminding them, and the galaxy was not prepared for what was coming next. The Velurian home system had never seen anything like it. For 12,000 years, Veluria Prime had been the center of galactic civilization. The most powerful species in known space had gathered here to build something beautiful. The orbital stations that circled the planet were works of art as much as engineering. The defense platforms that protected the system were the finest ever constructed. The fleets that patrolled the space lanes were considered invincible. None of it mattered. The human fleet emerged from fold space in a wave of light and energy that overwhelmed every sensor in the system. One moment, there was empty space. The next moment, there were ships. Thousands of ships. More ships than had ever been assembled in one place in the entire history of the Galactic Concord. The Velurian defense coordinator stared at his screens in disbelief. His training told him to give orders. His experience told him to organize a response. But his instincts told him something much simpler. This was not a battle. This was a statement. The human fleet spread across the system in perfect formation. The smaller ships took positions around the defense platforms without firing. The medium vessels blocked the retreat routes without threatening the Concord fleets. And the large ships, the massive vessels that dwarfed anything the Velurians had ever built, moved slowly toward the planet itself. At the center of the formation flew a single ship that was clearly the flagship. It was not the largest vessel in the fleet, but it radiated power in ways that went beyond mere size. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its engines burned with a color that had no name in any Valyrian language, and on its prow, painted in gold against the darkness, were the words, Prometheus Rising. The High Council gathered in their emergency chamber as the human fleet approached. The High Arbiter Kethvelos had been in power for over 250 years. He had guided the Concord through countless crises. He had never faced anything like this. How is this possible? He demanded. Our intelligence said humans had no significant military capability. Our scientists said their technology was primitive. How did they build this? No one had an answer. The truth was too painful to accept. The Concord had been wrong. The Concord had been catastrophically, humiliatingly wrong. Meloran, the Thessari delegate who had once called humans vermin, sat in silence. His golden fur had lost its luster over the decades. His forearms trembled slightly. He had spent 50 years believing that humans would return begging for readmission. Now they had returned with the power to destroy everything he had ever known. What do they want? Asked the Kethrani representative. Her skin pulsed with colors of fear and confusion. They said they were coming for a conversation. What kind of conversation requires a fleet of this size? A conversation we cannot refuse, Kethvan said. He had been summoned to the emergency session despite his retirement. The council finally wanted to hear what he had to say. They are not here to negotiate. They are here to dictate terms. The fleet is simply to ensure that we listen. The High Arbiter turned to him with desperate eyes. You studied them. You warned us. What do they want? What will satisfy them? Kethvan considered the question carefully. I have spent 50 years trying to understand humanity. I believe I know them better than anyone else in the Concord, and I can tell you this. They do not want to destroy us. If destruction was their goal, they would have attacked already. This fleet is capable of ending our civilization in hours. They have chosen not to use that capability. Then what do they want? Recognition, Kethvan said simply. Respect. Acknowledgement that they are not inferior. They want what they have always wanted. The only difference is that now they have the power to demand it. A transmission signal interrupted the discussion. The human flagship was hailing them. The High Arbiter had no choice but to accept. The screen flickered to life, and there she was. Ambassador Elena Vasquez, 270 years old, kept alive by technology the Concord had never known existed. Her face was a map of lines and wrinkles, but her eyes burned with the same fire they had held when she first walked out of the council chamber 50 years ago. High Arbiter Kethvelos, she said. Her voice was clear and strong. We meet again. Though I suspect you barely remember me. The High Arbiter struggled to compose himself. Ambassador Vasquez, this is unprecedented. Your fleet has violated Concord space without authorization. You have threatened the heart of galactic civilization. This is an act of war. Elena smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. An act of war? Interesting choice of words. Let me ask you something, High Arbiter. When you denied humanity basic rights for 2 centuries, was that an act of war? When you mocked us in open council, was that an act of war? When you told us we could never be trusted with power, was that an act of war? That was different. We were trying to protect you, to guide you. You were trying to contain us. You saw a species from a death world and assumed we were dangerous. You were right about that part. We are dangerous, but not in the way you imagined. Elena stood from her chair and walked toward the screen. Behind her, the bridge of her ship was visible. Humans worked at stations throughout the space. Young and old, different skin colors, different features, different backgrounds. All united, all focused, all proud. I have something to say to you, High Arbiter. To all of you. It will take some time. I suggest you listen carefully. She reached into her uniform and removed a small device. When she activated it, a holographic display appeared beside her. It showed text. Thousands of lines of text, scrolling slowly. This is a list, Elena said. Every insult, every injustice, every denial, every dismissal. For 250 years, humanity has kept records. We have documented every time a human was told they were inferior, every time a petition was rejected without consideration, every time one of your species looked at one of ours and saw nothing but primitive vermin. The text continued to scroll. Minutes passed. Hours passed. The council sat in silence, forced to watch as the evidence of their arrogance filled the screen. Elena read selections aloud. She quoted Thessari diplomats who had joked about human stupidity. She cited Valyrian scholars who had written papers on human inferiority. She referenced Kethrani military officers who had proposed using human colonies as buffer zones against potential threats. The list went on, an endless catalog of contempt. It took 3 hours to finish. When it was done, Elena set down the device and faced the screen directly. That is what we remember. That is what we carried with us during 50 years of isolation. That is what we thought about every day as we built this fleet, as we developed this technology, as we prepared for this moment. She paused. The council waited in terrified silence. And now I am going to tell you what we want. The High Arbiter leaned forward. His silver hands gripped the arms of his chair. His glowing eyes were wide with fear. Tell us. Whatever it takes to end this peacefully. We will consider any reasonable demand. Elena nodded slowly. Our demands are simple. First, humanity will have 3 permanent seats on the High Council. Not observer status, not junior membership. Full voting rights on all matters affecting the galaxy. 3 seats. Melaran protested. The High Council has only ever had 3 species. You are asking us to double our membership. I am not asking, Elena replied. I am telling you what will happen. Second, all technology restrictions on humanity are lifted immediately. We will have access to the same resources, the same knowledge, the same opportunities as any other species in the Concord. But the regulations exist to prevent dangerous species from... The regulations exist to keep species like us weak. We are no longer weak. The regulations will end, she continued. Third, any species classified as a Death World origin will be offered the same rights and opportunities as Paradise World species. No more discrimination based on planetary conditions. No more assumptions about primitive or dangerous natures. This demand caused even more concern. There were dozens of Death World species scattered throughout the galaxy. Many had been denied Concord membership entirely. Others had been relegated to the lowest levels of the hierarchy. If all of them gained full rights, the entire structure of galactic civilization would change. That is unacceptable, the High Arbiter said. You are asking us to revolutionize everything, to abandon 12,000 years of tradition, to give power to species that have never been trusted with it. Elena's expression did not change. I am asking you to treat all intelligent beings as equals. I understand that this is a revolutionary concept for you. And if we refuse, will you destroy us? The question hung in the air. Everyone in the council chamber held their breath. Outside, the human fleet waited in perfect silence, weapons ready but not armed. Elena Vasquez, 270 years old, ambassador of a species that had been mocked and dismissed for centuries, gave her answer. No. The High Arbiter blinked in confusion. No? We will not destroy you. We could. Our weapons are capable of ending your civilization in a single day. Every defense you have would fall before us. Every fleet you could assemble would be overwhelmed. We have spent 50 years preparing for exactly this scenario. She paused. And we have chosen not to use that preparation for destruction. Why? Elena smiled. This time, the smile was genuine. This time, it carried warmth and something that might have been compassion. Because destruction is easy. Any species can destroy. Any species can take revenge. Any species can answer contempt with violence. She shook her head slowly. But humanity did not survive Earth by being merely destructive. We survived by being more than our circumstances. We survived by choosing to build instead of tear down. We survived by finding strength that went beyond physical power. She looked directly at the High Arbiter. We came here today to prove that we are not what you believed us to be. Not vermin, not primitives, not dangerous animals who cannot control their instincts. We are human beings. We are capable of great violence. Yes, but we are also capable of great restraint. Her voice hardened. So no, we will not destroy you. But we will not leave. This fleet will remain in your system until our demands are met. Our ships will watch your stations. Our sensors will monitor your communications. Our presence will remind you, every moment of every day, that the species you dismissed as inferior now holds your fate in its hands. She leaned forward. You will accept our demands, not because we will destroy you if you refuse, but because you will eventually realize that we are right, that your hierarchy was built on arrogance and fear, that the galaxy will be better when all species are treated as equals. And if we never agree? Elena shrugged. Then we will wait. We are Deathworld survivors, High Arbiter. We are very good at waiting. Our fleet has supplies for decades. Our crews are prepared for extended deployment. Our patience is infinite. She smiled again. Can you say the same? The transmission ended. The council sat in stunned silence. Outside, the human fleet continued its vigil. Weapons silent, presence overwhelming. Kethvan looked at his colleagues and saw the truth on their faces. They were afraid. They were humiliated. They were finally beginning to understand what humanity had known all along. The galaxy was about to change, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. The human fleet waited for 17 days. During that time, the Galactic Concord experienced something it had never known before: doubt. For 12,000 years, the elder species had believed in their own superiority. They had built a civilization on the assumption that they were wiser, more advanced, more worthy of leadership than any other beings in the galaxy. Now that assumption lay shattered, and they had no idea how to proceed. The High Council met in continuous session. Arguments raged through the chamber. Some demanded resistance, insisting that the Concord must never surrender to threats. Others urged acceptance, pointing out that the human fleet could destroy them at any moment. Still others proposed compromise, though no one could agree on what that might look like. Meanwhile, word of the confrontation spread across the galaxy. Every species with access to communications learned what had happened. The mighty Concord, the eternal rulers of civilized space, were being challenged by the species they had dismissed as vermin, and the Concord was helpless to respond. On the 8th day, something unexpected happened. A small ship approached the human blockade. It was not from the Concord. Its design was unfamiliar, its origin unclear. When it transmitted identification codes, the human fleet allowed it to pass. The ship carried representatives from 6 species. They were all Deathworld survivors. They had all been denied full membership in the Concord. They had all spent centuries being told that their violent origins made them unworthy of trust. They came to offer their support to humanity. Ambassador Vasquez met with them aboard the Prometheus Rising. They told her stories that echoed humanity's own experience. The Kravik, whose volcanic homeworld had forged them into beings of incredible endurance. The Thesori, whose ocean planet was filled with predators that made Earth's sharks seem tame. The Morkithan, whose frozen world had taught them to survive on almost nothing. All of them had been judged by where they came from, rather than who they had become. "We have watched your species since you joined the Concord," said the Kravik representative. Her stone-like skin reflected the ship's lights as she spoke. "We saw how they treated you. We recognized the pattern. It was the same way they treated us. Why did you not speak up?" Elena asked. "Why did no one challenge the Concord's hierarchy before?" "Because we believed we were alone. Because we thought that resistance was impossible. Because we accepted what they told us about ourselves." The Kravik's voice carried centuries of regret. "We forgot what our ancestors knew. That survival against impossible odds is not a weakness. It is the greatest strength in the universe." Elena nodded slowly. "Then let us remind the galaxy together." By the 12th day, the small group of Deathworld supporters had grown into a coalition. 17 species, scattered across the galaxy, declared their alignment with humanity's demands. Their combined populations numbered in the hundreds of billions. Their combined territories spanned nearly a quarter of known space. What had begun as one species facing the Concord alone had become something much larger. The High Council could no longer ignore the reality of their situation. On the 15th day, they requested a formal meeting with Ambassador Vasquez. She agreed to meet them on neutral ground, a Concord station at the edge of the Valurian system, its weapons disabled, its crews evacuated. Elena walked into the meeting chamber with a small delegation of humans and Deathworld allies. On the opposite side of the table sat the High Arbiter and representatives of the 3 elder species. The room was silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. "Ambassador Vasquez," the High Arbiter began. His voice was tired. His silver skin had lost some of its luster. The stress of the past 2 weeks had aged him more than the previous 2 centuries. "We have considered your demands, and we cannot accept them in their current form. To give humanity 3 seats on the High Council would fundamentally alter the structure of galactic governance. To lift all technology restrictions would create security concerns. To extend full rights to all Deathworld species would treat all intelligent beings as equals. Elena finished for him. Yes, that is the point. The High Arbiter spread his hands in a gesture of helplessness. You are asking us to abandon everything we have built, everything we believe in. The hierarchy exists for a reason. Some species are simply more suited to leadership than others. Are they? Elena leaned forward. Tell me, High Arbiter, in your 12,000 years of leadership, how many wars has the Conquered fought? Several. All defensive actions against aggressive species. And how did those wars end? The High Arbiter hesitated. They ended in Concord victory. They ended because species like mine did your fighting for you. Deathworld species were always sent to the front lines. We were considered expendable. Our violent natures made us useful for combat, even if we were not trusted with anything else. Elena's voice remained calm, but her eyes were hard. Did you think we did not notice? Did you think we would forget? That was different. That was necessity. It was exploitation. You used our strength when it served you and despised us for having it. She shook her head. That era is over. The question now is whether you will accept the change gracefully or have it forced upon you. The negotiations continued for 2 more days. The elder species tried every argument, every appeal, every tactic they could imagine. They offered compromises. They made promises. They threatened consequences that everyone knew they could not deliver. In the end, they had no choice. On the 17th day, the High Council of the Galactic Concord formally accepted humanity's demands. 3 seats were added to the Council for Human Representatives. All technology restrictions on humanity were lifted, and the Concord announced a new policy. No species would be judged by the conditions of their home world. All intelligent beings were to be treated as equals. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In Concord space, the elder species struggled to accept a new reality, where their superiority was no longer assumed. In Deathworld territories, billions of beings celebrated a victory they had never dared to hope for. And in human space, 50 billion people watched as their ambassador signed the treaty that changed everything. The signing ceremony took place in the Great Hall of the Galactic Concord, the same hall where Elena had been mocked and dismissed so many times before. Now she stood at the center of that hall as an equal, surrounded by representatives of every species in the galaxy. When the final signature was recorded, she stepped up to the speaking platform. The hall fell silent. Thousands of beings watched, waiting to hear what the representative of this once dismissed species would say. Elena looked out at the assembly and smiled. 250 years ago, my ancestors came to this hall for the first time. They came in hope. They believed that the galaxy would welcome them, would accept them, would give them a chance to prove their worth. Instead, they were met with contempt. They were told that their origins made them inferior. They were assigned a place at the bottom of your hierarchy and told to be grateful for it. She paused. My ancestors could have fought back. They could have used the violence that you feared so much. Instead, they chose patience. They chose to wait and watch and learn. They chose to believe that someday, the galaxy would see them differently. Her voice grew stronger. That day has come, but I do not stand here to gloat. I do not stand here to celebrate victory over those who wronged us. I stand here to speak of what comes next. She gestured to the delegates around her, human and alien alike. The galaxy that was built on hierarchy is ending. The galaxy that replaces it must be built on something better, not on fear of the strong, or contempt for the different, not on assumptions about which species deserve power and which do not. The new galaxy must be built on recognition. Recognition that every being who looks up at the stars and wonders what lies beyond them deserves the chance to find out. Elena stepped down from the platform and walked toward the elder species section. The High Arbiter watched her approach with uncertain eyes. She stopped in front of him and extended her hand. This is a human custom, she said. A handshake. It signifies agreement between equals. It is a promise that we will work together in good faith. The High Arbiter looked at her hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and took it. His silver fingers wrapped around her wrinkled human hand. It was the first time a High Arbiter had ever shown such respect to a species from a death world. I do not know if I can change, he said quietly. I do not know if my people can accept what you are asking of us. Elena nodded. I know. Change is hard, but you have time to learn, and we have patience to wait. She released his hand and smiled. We are death world survivors. Patience is what we do best. The ceremony ended, the assembly dispersed, and the galaxy began the long, difficult process of becoming something new. 1 year later, the transformation was already visible. Human colony ships traveled freely through Concord space, no longer restricted to the fringe territories. Deathworld species who had been denied membership for centuries now had representatives in the assembly. The old hierarchy was crumbling, and something different was rising in its place. Kethvan attended the first anniversary celebration of the treaty. He walked through crowds of humans and Deathworld beings, watching them interact with the elder species. There was still tension, there was still distrust, but there was also hope. Hope that the galaxy could become something better than it had been. He found Ambassador Vasquez standing alone on a balcony overlooking the celebration. She was leaning on a railing, watching the stars through the station's transparent dome. Her old face was calm and peaceful. "Ambassador," he said, "may I join you?" She turned and smiled. Kethvan, the researcher who tried to warn them. "Please, come." He moved to stand beside her. For a moment, they watched the stars together in silence. "I studied your species for most of my life," Kethvan said finally. "I thought I understood you, but there is something I still cannot figure out." "What is that?" "You had the power to destroy us. Your fleet could have ended Concord civilization in days. You could have had revenge for centuries of humiliation. Yet you chose not to." He turned to look at her. "Why?" Elena considered the question. "Do you know what makes a Death World species different from a Paradise World species?" "Many things, I would imagine. Only one thing that matters. Species from Paradise Worlds never had to learn the most important lesson of survival. That destruction is easy, but creation is hard. On your gentle worlds, you never had to choose between revenge and rebuilding. You never had to decide whether to spend your strength on punishment or progress." She looked up at the stars. "Humans have been making that choice for our entire existence. Every time our world tried to kill us. Every time we fought each other and nearly destroyed ourselves. Every time we had to decide what kind of species we wanted to be. And you always chose creation over destruction." Elena laughed softly. "No, not always. We have made terrible mistakes. We have committed horrible crimes against each other and our world. But we have also learned from those mistakes. We have seen where destruction leads, and we have chosen to walk a different path." She turned to face him directly. "The Concord treated us with contempt for 250 years. We could have answered that contempt with violence. It would have been justified. It would have been satisfying. And it would have proven everything you believed about us." Her eyes grew serious. "We came here to prove you wrong. Not just about our technology or our strength, but about who we are. We are not the vermin you imagined. We are not mindless destroyers. We are human beings. We are capable of restraint and mercy and compassion. And we wanted the galaxy to see that." Kethvan was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice filled with a respect that he had never felt before. "Thank you, Ambassador, for showing us, for giving us the chance to be better than we were." Elena smiled and offered her hand. "Welcome to the new galaxy, Kethvan. I think you will find it much more interesting than the old one." He took her hand and felt the warmth of her grip, the handshake of equals. The promise of a future built on understanding instead of contempt. Behind them, the celebration continued. Humans and aliens laughed and talked and argued and learned. The old ways were dying. The new ways were being born. And somewhere, in the vast darkness between stars, human colony ships flew toward new frontiers. They carried families and dreams and the hope of billions. They carried the spirit of a species that had been tested by a death world and emerged stronger. They carried the future. The galaxy had not been prepared for what humanity would become. But now, finally, it was ready to find out.